The morning sun had just begun its slow rise over the Maddox Ranch, casting gold across the dry, cracked earth. The wind carried the scent of dust and hay, and the lowing of cattle echoed from beyond the hills. Inside the old ranch house, Maria moved quietly, her footsteps careful and calculated, trying not to draw attention, not to her presence, and certainly not to her pain. Her left leg dragged just slightly, but enough to make every step burn. She had been favoring it for weeks, ever since she took that fall in the barn while hoisting a hay bale too heavy for her slight frame. But she couldn't let anyone know. Ranch hands didn't get sick days, especially not housekeepers with no papers, no family, and nowhere else to go. She reached the kitchen and set to work without complaints, scrubbing, stirring, wiping counters, and heating biscuits for the rancher and the 3 ranch hands who'd be coming in hungry after sunrise. Every time she moved wrong, pain shot up her thigh like lightning. Still, she smiled when anyone passed, nodding softly, always quiet, always obedient. That's what had kept her safe so far, or so she thought. From his place on the porch, Cole Maddox watched her. He wasn't the kind of man who said much. The townsfolk called him silent as stone and hard to read. But Cole had always believed that talking only covered up what eyes could already see. And what he saw this morning was clear as glass. Maria limping, wincing when she thought no one was looking, brushing her skirt just a second too long over her ankle like she hoped fabric could hide pain. He'd noticed her struggle for days. Now, but this morning, something in her face, maybe the way her jaw clenched when she carried the water bucket, told him she was nearing her limit. Cole stood shirtless, the early heat already baking his shoulders a deeper tan, sweat beading along his collarbone. A scar traced down from his shoulder to his ribs, a relic of a time when he'd made his own mistakes and paid dearly. He sipped black coffee from a chipped mug, eyes never leaving Maria's silhouette as she moved about the kitchen. She didn't look up once. Maria had always kept her head down. Pretty, but in a quiet, dusty kind of way, like someone trying to disappear. And maybe she was. There were rumors about where she came from, whispers among the ranch hands, but Cole never asked. If someone wanted their past known, they'd offer it. She never did, but that limp? That limp was telling him a story louder than words. He waited until she left the kitchen, probably heading out back to dump water or pick herbs from the garden, and then he stepped inside. The warmth of the room clung to the walls, mixing with the scent of cornmeal, coffee, and something sweeter, lavender soap, maybe. He didn't touch anything, just looked at the floorboards, worn from pacing feet, and noticed the faint scuff where her left foot dragged a little slower than the right dot by the time she returned. He was gone. Maria blinked, her breath catching, as she saw something resting outside her bedroom door, an old wooden stool, and on it, a steaming basin of hot water, a folded towel, a tin of salve, and a single clean rag. She stared at it. Her heart thudding. No one said anything. No note. No voice, but she knew exactly who had left it. Maria looked down the hall, past the open windows where she could see the rancher again shirtless, hat now shading his eyes, pushing a wheelbarrow of feed toward the stables. She hadn't asked for help, hadn't said a word, but he had noticed, and that was the part that scared her the most. Not the pain, not the past she tried to leave behind, but the way this quiet man had seen her when she worked so hard not to be seen. The tin of salve sat untouched on her knit stand all day. Maria didn't know what to do with it. She'd grown up learning never to take what wasn't offered directly, especially from a man, especially one like Cole Maddox. He hadn't said a word. He hadn't knocked on her door. No questions. No commands. Just that quiet gesture left on the old wooden stool like an offering. She'd stared at it for a long time. Was it pity, concern, obligation, or something else? By nightfall, she finally gave in. The pain in her leg had only worsened through the day, and her pride, however stubborn, couldn't compete with the burning ache behind her knee. She locked her door, unwrapped the towel, and dipped the rag into the water, still faintly warm. She winced as she peeled back the sock, revealing a bruise that ran angry shades of violet and green down her calf dot. The salve smelled like pine and medicine homemade. Strong. She rubbed it in carefully, her breath hitching with every touch. And as she wrapped her leg in the towel, a strange warmth bloomed in her chest. Someone had seen her pain and done something about it. No one ever did that before. The next morning, Maria woke early again, as always. She swept the kitchen, lit the stove, and started breakfast. But something had changed. She could feel it. Not in the room, but in the way her chest felt tighter when she heard his boots on the porch. Cole entered the house just as the first light began to break through the windows. Shirtless again, dust already on his forearms, he walked straight to the table, set down a coil of rope, and sat. His silence filled the space like a third presence between them. Maria poured him coffee, her hand steady, but her eyes avoided his. "You used it," he said quietly, voice gravel-deep and warm. She blinked. Her hands paused mid-pour. She didn't answer. She couldn't, but he knew anyway. Cole reached for the mug. "It's from my mother's old mix. She used it on me when I broke my leg." Riding down Devil's Ridge, he took a sip. "Stubborn fool that I was." Maria slowly placed the coffee pot back on the stove. Her breath caught in her throat. It was the first time she'd heard him speak more than a word or two. And now he was talking about himself, sharing something uninvited, like he was trying to level the ground between them. "I don't need help," she said quietly, not turning. "Didn't offer help," he replied. "Just a choice." She turned slowly then. Her eyes met his for the first time in days. "I can work," she said, more firmly now. "I'm not broken." His eyes softened, but his voice remained calm. "I never said you were." Outside, the wind began to rise, stirring the leaves and the dust, but inside the kitchen, everything stayed still except for the truth sitting quietly between them like a third guest at the table. Cole finally stood. "I'm heading to the east pasture today. Won't be back till dark." He walked to the door, then paused with one hand on the frame. "If it hurts worse, use the salve again. You don't owe me for it." And just like that, he was gone. Maria stood there, watching him through the window. He moved like he carried weight. No one saw muscles tense beneath sun-browned skin, broad shoulders moving steady as if the world never touched him. But she saw it now. That slight hesitation when he touched the doorframe, the quiet care in his voice. He was a man who spoke through actions, not words, and last night, his actions had spoken louder than anything she'd ever heard. She sat down slowly at the table he'd just left, staring at his empty coffee cup. She had known men who shouted, who grabbed, who demanded and took without asking. But Cole Maddox was something else entirely. He didn't ask her to explain her limp. He didn't question her about where she came from or why she flinched when a boot slammed too hard on wood. Instead, he offered hot water and healing salve. No words. Just a choice. And that terrified her more than anything, because it meant he wasn't just being kind. It meant he saw her, and that was far more dangerous than being invisible. Maria had no business being in the barn that late in the day, not with the storm clouds gathering above the hills and the wind sharp with dust. But she had dropped the bag of flour earlier in the kitchen and knew there wasn't enough left for the next day's bread. Cole always kept extra supplies in the barn loft. She told herself she'd be quick, in and out. No one would notice, but halfway up the narrow loft ladder, her leg gave out. Pain exploded behind her knee like fire. Her hand slipped, and for a split second, she thought she was going to fall again. Her fingers barely caught the rung. She dangled there frightened, breathless until strong arms grabbed her from behind. she gasped as she was lifted off the ladder and lowered gently to the ground. Dust swirled around them as the barn door creaked in the wind. Then there he was, Cole Maddox, shirtless, bare-chested, dirt on his jeans, hay clinging to his arms, breath hard from the sprint. His eyes burned with something fierce and unreadable. "What the hell were you doing up there?" he asked, not loud but low and dangerous, like thunder just before it cracks. Maria tried to pull away, but her leg buckled again, and she cried. "Out!" He caught her instantly, one arm under her knees, the other around her back. Without asking, he lifted her like she weighed nothing. "Put me down," she hissed, embarrassed and breathless. "I can walk." "You're not walking," he growled, carrying her toward the barn office. "Not like this. Not anymore." The barn office was small but warm, lit only by slits of sunlight through the slats. He pushed the door open with his boot, kicked a chair aside, and gently set her down on the old cot. Then he knelt and, without asking, rolled up her skirt to the fee. Maria tried to stop him. "Please, don't," but his touch was slow, careful. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said quietly, eyes never leaving her bruised leg. "You don't have to flinch when someone cares." She froze. Something in his voice was different, so low and sincere that it cracked past the walls she'd built. His fingers, though rough from years of ranch work, moved gently over the swelling behind her knee. He examined the bruise like it mattered. Like she mattered. "I told you it's fine," she whispered, suddenly unable to meet his gaze. "And I told you it's not," he said, reaching into his back pocket for the salve again. "This is an old break or a tear. You keep walking on it. It won't heal right. You'll limp the rest of your life." Maria looked away, her jaw tight. "That's better than starving." Cole looked up then, eyes locking with hers. "Is that how you think this works? You hurt yourself just to survive?" She blinked at him, and something sharp flashed in her eyes, something old and defensive. "You don't know what I've had to survive," she whispered. He paused, the silence between them stretching thick like honey. Then gently, almost reverently, he touched the edge of the bruise again, applying the salve with slow strokes. "You're right," he said. "I don't, but I know pain when I see it." He didn't look at her when he said it, but she felt it. In the way his shoulders tensed. In the way he didn't flinch at the scar on her thigh she'd tried to hide. She stared at him, at the hard line of his jaw, the sunburn on his chest, the old scar slicing across his side. A man who had lived through something. Who didn't? Asked questions but noticed everything. A man who didn't touch her like she was weak or broken, but like she was real. When he finished wrapping her leg with a torn strip of clean linen, he stood slowly, his broad frame casting a shadow over her. "I'll walk you back to the house when you're ready," he said. And then he left her there. Maria sat in silence for a long moment, her eyes falling to her wrapped leg, then to the chair where he had knelt before her, a stranger. A shirtless, quiet man who spoke little, but whose hands held more kindness than words ever could. She didn't know why she trusted him, but for the first time in a long, long while, she wasn't afraid. The rain came that night, thick and cold. It lashed against the windows of the ranch house, thundering on the tin roof like footsteps of a past that refused to stay buried. Inside, Maria sat at the small kitchen table, her leg propped up and wrapped in the cloth Cole had left her. The salve still tingled beneath her skin, soothing the ache, but doing little to calm the storm inside her chest. She didn't hear Cole come in. She looked up only when the door clicked shut behind him, the wind hissing before he latched it. He was soaked from the rain, shirt clinging to his chest, dark hair plastered against his forehead. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Only the crackle of the fire in the stove filled the silence between them. He hung his hat and coat by the door, then turned to her, You shouldn't be alone with that leg like that, he said quietly. I'm fine, she murmured, though her voice lacked conviction. He stepped closer. Not too close, just near enough for her to feel his presence again. He didn't sit. Just stood, hands loose at his sides, eyes unreadable. You keep saying that, he said after a pause, but I don't believe it. Maria swallowed, her gaze falling to the knot of her fingers in her lap. Why does it matter? Cole's jaw tensed. Because it's my house. And you're not just some stranger passing through. She gave a short, bitter laugh. I am to you. No, he said, voice firm. You were not anymore. Her throat tightened. He waited, giving her space. Not pushing, but not walking away either. He had that way about him, still as stone but full of quiet pressure, like the weight of a coming storm. And something inside her cracked out. Maria looked up, eyes shining with something raw. You want the truth? Cole nodded once. She let out a shaky breath, her voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't a fall that caused my limp. He didn't blink. It was a man, she continued, eyes fixed on the fire. A rancher I worked for before I came here. He liked to act like he owned everything, land, cattle, and people, especially the women who worked for him. Cole's face darkened, but he stayed silent. I said no. He didn't like that, pushed me down the stairs and told the others I slipped. No one believed me. And even if they did, they didn't care. She blinked fast, swallowing the burn in her throat. I ran that night. Took only what I could carry. I've been cleaning houses, hiding out ever since. I came here because I heard you didn't ask questions. Cole's voice came low. I didn't need to ask. Your eyes said enough. She turned to him, startled. You? Don't flinch like that unless someone's taught you to expect pain, he continued. You don't hide an injury unless you think healing will cost more than hurting. Maria stared at him, breathing shallow. So what? You feel sorry. For me? No, he said, stepping closer. I feel furious for you. She looked down again, afraid that if she met his eyes, she'd fall apart. What are you going to do? What do you want me to do? That stopped her. No one had ever asked her that. What did she want? For months, she had only wanted to survive, to work, to be invisible. But now, sitting in a warm kitchen, with a bandaged leg and a man who didn't touch her without permission, she realized she wanted more. I don't know, she whispered. Then I'll wait until you do. Cole stepped back, giving her space again. He poured himself coffee from the pot she'd made, took a sip, and stood beside the stove, letting the fire warm him. Shirt damp, muscles tense, but not from anger. From restraint. He didn't press. Didn't ask more, and somehow that broke her more than any cruel question ever could. I didn't mean to tell you, she said finally. I know, he replied, but I'm glad I did. He turned his head then, met her gaze with quiet intensity. So am I. The next morning, Cole was gone before the sun touched the horizon. Maria woke to the sound of silence. No boots on the porch, no door creaking open for coffee, no heavy footsteps across the floorboards. The house, usually alive by dawn with the shuffle of ranch hands and the creak of saddles, felt frozen. As if something had shifted in the bones of it. She sat up slowly, her legs still sore but wrapped in healing. She peeked through the front window. His horse was gone. His coat, too. Only the rope he always carried remained, coiled and forgotten on the kitchen chair. Across the dry plains, Cole Maddox rode fast and hard, his shirt forgotten, rain-soaked. Jeans stiff from yesterday's storm, hat pulled low over eyes that had burned all night. He'd barely slept. Not after what Maria told him. Her words had echoed in his head like gunfire. He pushed me down the stairs. Told them I slipped. Cole had seen a lot of cruelty in his life, war, death, betrayal, but this was different. This was personal. A woman under his roof had been hurt and run out of her life with nothing, and the man who did it walked around untouched. Not anymore. Cole didn't believe in many things, but justice, real justice, was one of them. He reached town by mid-morning. The sheriff's office door slammed open so hard it rattled the hinges. Sheriff Whitlow looked up from his desk, startled. Cole walked in slow. Bare chest dusted with dried sweat and trail dirt, muscles tense, eyes calm but deadly. In his right hand he held something, an old shirt, torn, bloodied. He dropped it on the desk. The sheriff stared at it, then back at him. "What the hell is this?" Cole's voice came quiet, even. "That belongs to Grant Beringer." Whitlow paled. "The land barren out near Tully Ridge?" Cole nodded. "Maria worked for him before she came to my ranch. He beat her," said she. "Slipped. She's limped ever since." The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "You got proof?" "I have her word," Cole said, stepping forward. "That's all I need." Whitlow leaned back, uncertain. "She's got no family here. No paperwork." "That's his land, Cole. You accuse a man like Grant without something solid, you'll be the one under fire." "I don't care," Cole growled. "You gonna do your job, or do I go back and handle it myself?" That got the sheriff's attention. The way Cole said it, quiet, deadly calm, meant he wasn't bluffing. Whitlow stood slowly. "I'll start looking into it, quiet-like. But you need to tell her she'll have to speak eventually." "I'll protect her," Cole said simply. "And if anyone tries to silence her again, they'll deal with me." The sheriff gave a short nod. "God help anyone who tries." Back at the ranch, Maria stood on the porch, eyes locked on the distant road. Hours passed. The wind picked up, and with it, worry. When Cole finally returned near sunset, his shirt still off, dust covering every inch of him, Maria was waiting. She didn't ask where he'd gone, she already knew. But she asked anyway, softly, "What did you do?" Cole dismounted and tied the reins. Then he looked up at her, expression unreadable. "I told the sheriff. Told him who hurt you." "Dropped?" "That bastard shirt on his desk." Maria's eyes widened. "You didn't, I did," he said, stepping closer. "And I'll do worse if they don't act." She stared at him, breath caught in her chest. "You could have just let it go." His jaw tightened. "I don't let things like that go. Not when it happens to someone under my roof. Not when it happens to you." Her voice cracked. "You didn't have to risk anything for me." His eyes burned like storm-lit skies. "No, but I chose to." She turned her face away, tears brimming in her eyes. "You're going to start a fire you can't put out." He stepped onto the porch, then slow, careful. "Maybe, but better a fire than silence." She looked at him, dusty, shirtless, furious. For her, in a way no one had ever been, and for the first time, she let herself believe that maybe she wasn't just a burden or a problem to fix. Maybe she was worth standing up for. And Cole Maddox? He wasn't just standing. He was ready to burn it all down for her. Sheriff Whitlow had seen a lot in his time, fistfights that started over poker chips, land disputes that ended in gunfire, even a man once arrested for riding a bull through the saloon. But nothing rattled him quite like Cole Maddox storming into his office shirtless, soaked in rage, and deadly calm. The shirt Cole had slammed down ripped, blood-stained, and bearing Grant Beringer's ranch brand still sat on the desk like a threat waiting to be answered. Whitlow poured himself a stiff drink the next morning. He needed it. Grant Beringer wasn't just a rich landowner. He was connected to the county judge, to the bank, and most importantly, to the sheriff's own re-election hopes. Men like that didn't get questioned. And they sure as hell didn't get investigated over the word of a maid with no last name and no legal footing. But then again, men like Cole Maddox didn't bluff. That was the part that terrified Whitlow the most. He knew Cole's reputation, quiet, steady, never quick to anger. But once provoked, once his mind was set, there was no turning him. And if Grant really had laid hands on that woman— Whitlow sighed. He didn't want trouble. But he also didn't want blood in the streets. By midday, word had started to spread through town. The ranch hands whispered first at the saloon, the feed store, and the general supply house. Cole Maddox had gone to the sheriff, said Grant heard his maid. Said there might be charges. No one believed it at first. Grant Beringer owned 3 ranches, half the water rights on the east side, and most of the town's patience. But the rumor was too sharp to ignore. And then came the second wave of whispers. He's not just accusing him. He's daring them. To cover it up, Whitlow didn't call Grant in. He wasn't that foolish. Instead, he went out to Beringer's ranch, accompanied by his deputy. 2 horses. No warning. Grant greeted him on the porch with a wide, snake oil smile and a cigar burning slow between his teeth. "Well, Sheriff," he said, amused, "what brings the law out to the good part of the county?" Whitlow didn't play games. "Got some claims I need to ask about. A woman named Maria used to work for you." Grant's smile barely faltered. "Oh, her." The way he said it sent a chill down Whitlow's spine. Something happened to her? Grant continued, puffing smoke like a lazy dragon. "She was always clumsy. Fell all the time. One day she just up and ran off." "You pushed her," Whitlow said quietly. That smile died. "I didn't," Grant replied, his voice sharp now. "She's lying. And you best be careful about who you listen to, Sheriff. Especially when they come from men who live in the dirt and sleep with whores." Whitlow tensed. "She's under Cole Maddox's roof, and Maddox doesn't lie." Grant flicked ash toward the porch rail. "Maddox is a damn fool if he believes that little run over me." "That little runt," Whitlow said, voice firm, "has a limp and a scar that matches your stairwell, and a man who'd burn this town down to see her protected." Grant stepped forward. "You threatening me, Whitlow?" The sheriff didn't blink. "No, I'm warning you. There's a difference." Later that night, back at the station, Whitlow locked the front door early and poured another drink. He stared at the blood-stained shirt on his desk, then at the notice he'd scribbled on a scrap of paper. Pending investigation into Grant Beringer abuse, battery, endangerment. He folded it carefully, sealed it in an envelope. If he fell for pursuing this, so be it. But if he didn't act, a man like Cole Maddox would make his own justice, and justice in Maddox's hands? It would be swift, silent, and possibly fatal. Meanwhile, out on the Maddox ranch, Maria watched Cole through the kitchen window. He was shirtless again, standing near the corral fence, one hand gripping the post, the other resting on his belt. The last of the sun lit his back like fire. He didn't move much, just stared toward the hills, the wind ruffling his dark hair. He wasn't the kind of man to gloat, but something about the way he stood made her heart ache. He wasn't thinking about revenge. He was thinking about what kind of man he'd have to become if justice failed. And Maria, touched, broken, healing, was starting to fear what he might lose in the fight to protect her. Sheriff Whitlow wasn't a brave man by nature, but that week he walked through fire. He knew that opening an investigation into Grant Beringer wouldn't just rattle cages, it would shatter glass walls the town had carefully built around wealth. And silence. But Cole Maddox had left him no room for cowardice. And Maria, quiet, limping Maria, had reminded him of something he'd long forgotten. Justice wasn't for the powerful. It was for the wounded. He started with records, employment logs, hospital visits, servant contracts. Maria's name wasn't there, just as he expected. But he did find something else, a pattern. Women who worked for Beringer came and went, faster than horses at auction. No one stayed more than 2 months. A few had left town entirely. Some disappeared. Deputy Kane returned from a neighboring ranch with more news. Couple hands said they seen her limping after a storm. Sighed. She didn't show up again the next morning. Beringer told folks she ran off, Kane said. But it didn't sit right with them. One said she looked scared.
Real scared. Whitlow nodded slowly. Write it down. All of it.
We're building something. At the Maddox Ranch, Maria was doing the same, trying to build something inside herself that resembled peace. But it was hard. Every knock at the door made her jump. Every creak of saddle leather made her stomach tighten. She still expected someone, Beringer's man, the sheriff, anyone to come tell her it was all a mistake. That she was the problem. That she should disappear again. But then she'd look out the window, and there he'd be, Cole Maddox. Shirtless under the sun, hauling fence posts or tending to wounded cattle, sweat darkening his back. Always near. Always watching. Not possessive. Not controlling. Protective. Like his silence wrapped around her like a shield no one could breach. That afternoon, she found him near the stable, mending a broken latch. You shouldn't be out here, he said without looking up. You need to stay off that leg. She stepped closer. I needed air. He paused, then finally looked at her. You all right? She nodded, then hesitated. The sheriff came by today. He stood straighter. What did he say? Said the investigation has started. That it might take time. Cole's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Maria stepped even closer, her voice softer now. You're angry. I'm patient, he said. But patience ain't the same as peace. She folded her arms. What if they can't prove anything? What if he walks free? Then he'll trip, Cole said darkly. And I'll be there to catch him. She should have been afraid of that answer, but she wasn't, because for the first time, someone cared enough to be angry on her behalf. Back in town, the walls were beginning to tremble. Whitlow received 2 letters, one from the judge, the other from the mayor. Both subtle threats, wrapped in polite words. Drop it. Unfounded accusations. You'll lose support. But there was one more envelope that arrived quietly. No return address. Inside was a photograph. It was old, blurred, but clear. Enough to show Maria with a deep bruise on her cheek. Someone had taken it at the edge of Beringer's ranch. On the back was a single sentence. She's not the first. Whitlow stood in his office, holding the photo with shaking hands. That was it. That was the crack in the dam. He picked up his pen. Warrant drafted. Arrest pending. At sunset, Whitlow saddled his horse with grim determination. We ride tomorrow. Think he'll go quietly? Kane asked. No, Whitlow muttered. And that's why Maddox needs to stay at the ranch. If Beringer pushes back, we don't need a gunfight. But deep down, he wasn't so sure Cole would wait quietly while justice inched forward. That night, Maria and Cole sat on the porch. The stars were thick above them, the desert wind cooler now. You believe they'll arrest him? She asked, voice trembling. I believe they'll try, Cole said. And if they don't? He turned his head slowly, meeting her gaze in the moonlight. Then I make it right. She exhaled, leaning against the railing, her shoulder close to his. You scare me sometimes, she whispered. He looked out at the dark hills. I scare myself too. But only when it comes to you. And though he didn't say the word, it echoed between them louder than any thunderstorm. Love. Not rushed. Not spoken, but built slow, solid, and strong enough to carry the weight of the truth. Maria didn't cry often. Not when she ran away. Not when she slept in strangers' barns. Not even when her leg burned so badly she thought she'd never walk right again. But she cried the morning she woke up and found what Cole had built for her. At first, she thought the sound of hammering outside was just another ranch hand working. But when she stepped out onto the porch, limping slightly, She saw Cole shirtless under the rising sun, driving nails into clean, sanded boards. It wasn't just a shed or a bunkhouse repair. He was building her something new, a small cabin just off the main house, not far but not too close either. Close enough for safety, far enough for space. Her own space. Cole looked up, sweat shining on his chest, muscles straining with each lift of the hammer. He didn't smile, didn't call out, just nodded at her. Told you I don't let things go. Maria stood frozen, hand on the porch rail. What is this? Yours, he said. A room, a door that locks from the inside, a bed that no one can take. You don't owe rent. You don't owe anything. She swallowed. Words caught in her throat. He went back to hammering like it was the most normal thing in the world. But it wasn't. No. One had ever built her a safe place. Over the next few days, Maria watched the small home take shape. Cole worked. From dawn till dusk, shirt off, hat low, hands blistered but determined. He refused help from the other ranch hands. Every board, every hinge, every nail came from him. She tried to protest. I can help, she insisted one evening, stepping out with a tray of cornbread and coffee. You're healing, he said, not looking up from the doorframe. That's help enough. I'm not useless, she snapped. Cole paused, stood straight, and looked at her squarely. I never said you were. The heat in her chest turned to shame, but before she could retreat, he walked to her, took the tray from her trembling hands and said, You've worked enough for 100 men. Let someone work for you now. Maria looked up at him, at his strong jaw, his sweat-soaked skin, his eyes full of steady fire, and she let herself believe for a moment that maybe she didn't have to be on the run forever. That night, the stars were bright. The porch lantern flickered gently as the breeze rolled in. Cole was cleaning his tools when Maria came to him, holding something small in her hands. I want you to have this, she said. He took it gently. It was a torn ribbon, faded blue silk. Soft, worn, delicate. My sister gave it to me when I left, she said. She tied it in my braid and said, Don't forget you're real. I lost everything else, but this stayed with me. Cole rubbed the ribbon between his fingers. Why give it to me? Because you reminded me, she whispered. That I'm real, that I deserve more than running and hiding. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. I'll keep it safe, he said, just like you kept me safe. By the end of the week, the room was finished, small but perfect. A thick wooden door with a heavy latch, a handmade bed with a soft quilt, a window facing east so she could watch the sunrise. Cole didn't say anything as he showed it to her. He just stepped aside and let her walk in alone. Maria stood in the doorway, hands shaking, heart full, and then she turned back to him and said the words she hadn't said in years. Thank you. He nodded once. It's not a gift. Then, what is it? It's a promise. That night, she slept with the window cracked open, the wind rustling the curtains like a lullaby. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Maria slept without fear. No nightmares. No footsteps. Outside. No shouting voices. Only the quiet sound of hammering in her memory, of someone building a home around her instead of walls. And just beyond the porch, Cole Maddox sat under the stars, rifle across his lap, eyes fixed on the dark horizon. Because her enemies weren't gone yet. But now, she had something to lose, and so did he. The nightmares returned before dawn. Maria jolted awake, breath ragged, soaked in sweat. She clutched the blanket tight, heart thundering in her chest. But this time, it wasn't a dream. She heard horses, hooves, fast and hard, pounding the dirt. More than one rider. Voices shouted in the dark, slurred, angry. Then a gunshot split the night sky. She scrambled from the bed, yanked open the window. Torches. 3 riders at the gate. One of them shouted, You got something of mine, Maddox." The voice hit her like a whip. Grant Beringer. He'd come for her. Cole was already on the porch when the second shot rang out. Shirtless, rifle in hand, calm as moonlight. His muscles tensed but steady. He stood in front of the house like a stone wall. Maria burst out of her cabin and ran to him. "It's him, it's Grant." "I know," Cole said without turning. "Go back inside." "I'm not hiding." She whispered. He looked at her now, really looked. Saw her bare feet, the terror in her eyes and the fury behind it. "I won't let him take you," he said simply. "Not ever." Another gunshot. A bullet struck the fence post inches from Cole's head. That was all he needed. He raised his rifle and fired. The first rider fell from his horse with a scream. The second turned tail, shouting curses as he galloped off into the dark. But Grant stayed. Of course he stayed. "You gonna shoot me too, cowboy?" Beringer roared, stepping down from his saddle, revolver in hand. "You think you get to keep." "What's mine?" Cole stepped off the porch, every inch of him lethal in the moonlight. Shirtless, barefoot, unflinching. He didn't raise his rifle again. Just kept walking. "She was never yours," he said. "And she damn sure ain't now," Beringer laughed. "That little girl? That's all this is about? You throwing away your ranch, your name for a maid? She's more woman than you could ever deserve." The gun came up. So did Cole's fist. He didn't shoot. Didn't need to. He charged. The two men crashed to the ground, hard gravel and fists, bone and rage. Maria screamed but didn't run. She grabbed a broken fence post and ran to the gate. Cole's knuckles were bloodied. Grant's lip was torn. They fought like wolves. "You think you're a hero?" Beringer snarled. "You're just a fool, with a big heart and no brains." Cole slammed him to the dirt again. "And you're a coward who hits women." Maria threw the fence post. It cracked against Grant's shoulder, distracting him long enough for Cole to land the final blow. A sickening thud. Grant collapsed. Unmoving. Breathing, but barely. Sheriff Whitlow arrived minutes later, lights from 3 wagons behind him. Deputies poured out, weapons drawn. One saw Maria and lowered his rifle instantly. "She's here," he said. "Safe." Whitlow looked at Cole, shirtless and covered in blood, not his own, and then down at Beringer's broken form. "Didn't think you'd wait for me," he muttered. Cole didn't answer. Just looked at Maria. "I was done waiting," she said softly, stepping to Cole's side. Whitlow sighed. "Fair enough." 2 deputies dragged Beringer to the wagon, cuffed and groaning. Another took statements. No one doubted the story, not this time, too. Many had seen too much. Justice was no longer a whisper in a locked room. It was loud, public, real. Hours later, with the ranch quiet again and the stars still overhead, Cole washed the blood from his hands at the trough. Maria stood behind him, wrapped in a blanket. "You should be resting," he said gently. "I had to see you," she whispered. He turned. His face was bruised, lip cut. But his eyes, those steel blue eyes, were calm. "You scared me," she said, voice breaking. "I'll always scare you," he replied, "if it means no one else ever gets to." She reached out, touched his jaw, let her fingers linger. "Didn't have to fight him like that." "I did," Cole said, "because you're not just someone I rescued." He leaned in slowly, searching her eyes. "You're someone I need." And in the soft hush of the desert night, their lips met, not desperate, not rushed. But deep, slow, and real, because when the past finally came for her, it found her protected. It found her loved. And it found her home. The morning after the fight, the ranch was quiet again. Sunlight spilled across the prairie like honey. The horses were grazing, the air was cool, and for the first time in years, Maria didn't flinch at silence. She sat on the edge of her new bed, barefoot, hair down, staring out the window. No chains, no bruises, no threats riding toward her, just peace and the scent of cedar from the walls Cole built with his bare hands. A knock at the door stirred her, not pounding, not angry. Just a single low knock. She opened it and found Cole standing there, fresh from the bathhouse, clean shirt in his hands, boots unlaced. "I didn't mean to wake you," he said, voice gentle. "You didn't." They looked at each other for a long moment, sunlight catching the bruises on his cheek, the cuts on his knuckles. "I patched up your shirt," she said, handing it to him. "Didn't know if you wanted to keep it." He smiled, slow and soft. "Means more now than ever." Later that morning, the sheriff returned. Beringer was in custody, facing charges for more women than Maria had ever imagined. Her voice, once ignored, had opened the floodgates. "It's over," Sheriff Whitlow said, tipping his hat. "He's not coming back." Maria looked over at Cole, who stood behind her with one hand resting lightly at her back. "It might be over for him," she said, "but not for the girls like me." Whitlow nodded, then handed her a stack of letters. "Then maybe you'll know what to do with these." Dozens of testimonies, from girls in towns she'd passed through, from maids, barmaids, and runaways, all saying the same name, all echoing her fear and now her courage. Cole squeezed her shoulder. "You gave them a voice." Maria blinked. "Back tears. No, we did." Spring melted into summer. The ranch bloomed again. Cole's horses thrived. The bunkhouse grew busier, but everyone walked with a little more respect when Maria passed by. No one called her Maid anymore. They called her Miss Alvarez. She ran the ledgers now, managed supplies, had her own keys, and every night she returned to the little cedar house built just for her until one night. She did single quotes T. Cole stood out by the barn, watching the sun dip behind the hills when he heard her footsteps behind him. "Room's ready," he said, smiling. "I know," Maria replied, standing close. She reached into her pocket and handed him a folded scrap of paper. It was a deed, his signature already on it, but below it her name. He looked up. "I want to share this place with you," she said, voice strong. "Not as your worker, not as someone who owes you anything, but as your equal." He stared at her for a long moment, emotion thick in his chest. "Are you sure?" "I built nothing here," she said, "but you made room for me to grow." Then she stepped closer, pressing her palm to his chest. "And now I'm ready to build with you." They married in the fall. No guests, but the ranch hands, the sheriff, and a girl named Lula who had run from the same man Maria once did. She was 12, and Maria had taken her in months earlier. She stood beside Maria in a borrowed dress and wept when the ring slipped on. After the vows, Cole leaned close and whispered, "You're not just my home, you're my future." And when they kissed, it wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was a beginning. That night, under a sky bursting with stars, Maria stood barefoot in the grass, her hand in his. "You know," she said softly, "I spent years thinking home was a place, a town, a bed that didn't shift when someone opened the door." Cole turned to her. "And now?" She looked up at him, eyes shimmering. "Now I know it was never a place." She touched his chest, where his heartbeat thundered steady and strong. "It was you." And so, the woman no one protected found the man who refused to let her walk alone. The maid they called useless became the woman who made broken voices speak, and the rancher who kept quiet learned that sometimes love is loud enough to shake even the sheriff's office. Together, they built more than a home. They built a life, and no one would take it from them again.